So for me, I remember when I didn't have an excuse. Like there was the old gods destroyed. There was a moment where it's like I wanted an excuse, like I said, to like not give and to not be faithful. But I looked back and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be held accountable for what I know God can do. So I got to trust God. About 6 years ago, we were in Moore, Oklahoma, and we were serving on Life Church campus there, and it was amazing. Like I love my campus pastor, Ashley, my wife, who sings up here on stage. She was under a worship pastor that she really got along with. He was developing her, training her up, and all these things. We're like, we're in our sweet spot. This is amazing. This is a great place. And we drove through Muskogee, which is our hometown, where I was born and raised here, and we felt God say like, oh, you need to be back here. And we're like, no, we're good. No, we're good. We like more. We're having a good time. Like, what are you talking about, God? We must have ate something bad last night. That couldn't have been God. So in order to get away from what God was calling us to, we're like, all right, God, there's no opportunities in Muskogee. If a door opens, we'll take a look, okay? And we thought we were done. You know what I mean? Like, we went to bed like, got him. He ain't got no chance to get us in Muskogee. He ain't going to get me. So when he opens a door, that's on him. So then, like 3 months later, we get a phone call that there was a network church, and the network pastor was stepping down. And I was like, nah, that sounds like a door. Are you sure that's a door, Ashley? That's a door. So we have a conversation, get to be really good friends with the network pastor stepping down. I'm asking him all these questions. I'm trying to find red flags so that I can get out of the call of God on my life. Don't have these like red flags where God is saying, no, that's not your opportunity. It was like, oh, green light again. I sit down with the board. And the board's asking questions. I'm asking all these questions. Like I'm really diving into whether the board is healthy enough to like not be terrible. Like, I don't know if you've ever dealt with church politics. If a board is bad, you do what you want to run. All right. If you're in ministry, if the board is bad, you have a great board, by the way, fantastic people. If the board is bad, you just want to go somewhere else on staff anyways. And so I'm asking all these questions looking for health, and they're all really healthy. They're passionate. They want to see people reach for Christ. They want to do whatever it takes. And then what I found out though, is that we were in debt. Like the church wasn't just in debt. We were in a building that couldn't sustain itself because we had too much of a lease, and we only had 96 people, and the building we couldn't really pay for what we had. So we're in debt, and I'm like, hey, I got a job over here. It pays good money. I'm about to come to a job where they're in debt. Can they pay me? And one of the board members is like, why would you leave a job that's paying for one where we can't really pay you that much? I was like, oh, y'all got money to pay me? I didn't know, because we've had enough conversations. I know y'all are in debt. I know we owe a little bit left on the lease, and like y'all gonna pay me? She was like, oh, probably not. Like she was able to be honest. Like, I've seen your books. You don't got no money to pay me, so I don't know who was pulling that money together. I already knew, like, y'all couldn't pay me. This conversation wasn't about pay. This was about the call of God. And the reason I could have that conversation, the reason I could say, like, all I know is that I've got to follow God and where he calls me to be, not where the money's at. So all I know is, like, I looked back and I saw grandparents who trusted God when there was nothing, and God came through. So all I know is I've got to trust God if he's called me here. All I know is I've got stones built up from a generation ago that told me what God could do and what he would do. And I've been following God. He's been faithful ever since. And so with that, it was like, the question is not, is the Jordan River big? Is there debt? Is there money enough? Is the giant big enough? The question is not about whether or not it looks possible. The question is whether it's a call of God on my life. The question that you're called to deal with when you want to build the stones of memory for what God has called you to do is not about whether or not it seems possible to you. It's about whether God has called you to take down that giant. And for some of you, you've got some giants, you got some rivers, you got some things in front of you that you're waiting on God to part some rivers, and it's time to just take a step in the waters. Just one step in the waters. That's all they did at the Jordan. They just took the Ark of the Covenant, they stepped in the waters, and it parted. And for some of you, you've been waiting on the water. Like, I'll just wait back here, wait on God to do that thing. When it happens, it's going to be cool. I'll just wait, and I'll wait. And God's like, no, I called you to step. Like when I said follow me, I didn't say sit on the couch and follow me. I meant take steps. Walk towards me. Look that giant in the face and remind him who I am. He told you to follow him, and you're not just doing it for you. You're not just doing it so that you can look good and the world can see how powerful your God was to you. You're doing it so your kids can see how powerful your God was. And when they face a giant, they'll go, I don't have an excuse. This giant's got to go because my God's big enough, because I saw my parents do it. I saw my grandparents do it, and they took giants down. So my job is to take giants down because my God is big enough. And let me just tell you, we came here for 12 to 18 months. 12 to 18 months, we didn't have no pay. There was no pay whatsoever. We spent savings. We did all of the things we could to get here because God was faithful to provide just enough to get here and do exactly what we needed to do. And what I knew in that moment is that I'd seen my grandparents go from dirt poor to owning apartment complexes, owning houses for rent houses, and pastoring churches, all being faithful, and at the same time God was blessing them. They were driving Cadillacs back when Cadillacs were Cadillacs. All because of God's faithfulness. So I was like, oh, if he can do those things now, God can do it here. And I'm not here to brag. I just need you to see what God can do. And when we got here, we spent all we had. And I need you to know a little bit of something. Right now, I don't owe nobody nothing. My God has been faithful in every area of my life, 100% debt-free, not because we got fat checks. Not because we got fat checks. I'm talking about my God being faithful to deliver in every step. And what Ryan said about you give up things you love for things you love even more, and how God always seems to add them back. That's been my experience with the stones that were set by my grandparents, the stones that I'm trying to set for the next generation, and what I believe the stones you're going to set for your kids and your grandkids. You're going to lay some foundations that they're going to see mom and dad knew how to fight for the things of God. I ain't got no choice but to take the next giant down. What's his name? I need to know his name so I can tell him what my God's name is. What's that river look like? Oh, it's flood stage. That's the perfect stage for my God to do a miracle. And so today, some of you are going to determine to set the stones up so that your next generation has no excuse but to trust God because your God is big enough. And it just so happens that we don't use stones to build buildings. We happen to use bricks. And here at TheBrick.Church, you're the brick. And you're making more bricks, and we're going to build more brick buildings until we got so many places, so many locations, because there's a whole generation that needs to see the bricks you've built. And I'm not even scared to tell you that. I'm planning on God doing it debt-free in every stage. I'm planning on God showing up and showing out. And whether he does it through a big giver or a whole bunch of faithful givers, I want you to know that it was God who took a church out of debt, not my skills, in case you were wondering. It was God who took a group of people in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and made them a hub to reach every small community wherever they could go. It was a God who was faithful. And for us to do that, it will be you doing what God has called you to do so that not only is this generation see and know that God is good, your next generation, the next generation, they're not going to have cherry blossom rat brain. The next generation is going to have giant God brain. When they look, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember. I ain't scared of that smell. Yeah, no, I remember my dad was scared of that smell and I saw him take it down. I remember my dad was scared of that giant, I saw him take it down. I remember my dad was an alcoholic, I saw him defeat it. I remember my dad was addicted, I saw him defeat it. I remember whenever I saw their marriage almost fall apart and God show up, their finances and God show up. I remember when we got the diagnosis and God showed up. All because you guys are stone setters, brick builders, people to reach the next people.